Well, here we are, all gathered together for the next installment. So join me with the tasty beverage of your choice close to hand while we begin the Long Hoya Tour 2025, Part 2. And I'm happy to take this moment to send out a special thanks to Jill's a plant lover and who each sent me super thanks in the last week or so. Your contributions to the channel are greatly appreciated and go a long way in helping keep me in Hoyas and technology and infrastructure. So thank you very much for your support. And from the comments last week, you guys are a riot. I laughed out loud a bunch. The question was, what's the one plant you regret buying? And boy, some people just went to confession on that and explained it all. It was so fun. So many of your experiences mirrored my own. The plants you regret buying were alocasia, calathea, and the big winner, the one that kept coming up over and over again, was philodendron. Whether it was pink princess or white knight or white princess or whatever they were, crawling philodendrons was mentioned too. Y'all kind of went, nope, not happening again, not going there, shouldn't have done it in the first place. But yeah, we've all done that. We've all been there. We've got bodies buried in the backyard or the compost bin. So yeah, that was a whole lot of fun. And some of you are really, really funny. So yeah, thank you all of you who joined into that conversation. So this week on the Long Hoya Tour, we actually get down into the plant room or the Hoya room. I kind of use the names interchangeably, so it's the same place. And we're going to start this week with the northwest and northeast walls of that room. So the first place we're going to start is on the northwest wall, and we're going to take a look at some of my small shells and an antique chest and what's growing there. So starting up here, we have my long-suffering Hoya Kamingiana. I have to find a better spot for it, but it's such a big plant, long plant, that it's difficult to find a good spot. And next, down here, we have Hoya Tsangi, and this was labeled as the real Tsangi, as opposed to something else. And next to it, we have my Hoya Bella outer variegated. And I've come to really love Hoya Bella. I have 3 varieties, and they're all a lot of fun. And hidden down in here is a Hoya lacunosa, which is blooming down in there. And next to that is my Hoya numelarioides, which has become a favorite. And next to it is a Hoya carnosa tricolor, sometimes called Crimson Queen. And now we're going to take a look at the wire shells against the northwest wall. These are 6 foot tall or 1.8 meters and 36 inches wide, which is just under a meter. And they're about 24 inches deep. And they're the mainstay of the architecture of this Hoya room. So let's take a look. And on the shelf next to that, we have my Hoya species NR001 and Hoya incrustata outer variegated. And we had our struggles for a while. And then Hoya species Bengkulu Rindo rafflesia. And it is getting ready to bloom. And next to that is Hoya AH074, doing very well and making its way up through the top of the grow shelves. And finally, in the back row, we have Hoya, formerly known as a Kuta, but it's now a verticillata. And it's doing very well back here. And in the front row of that shelf is my Hoya obcordata. And next to that is a Hoya carnosa compacta, outer variegated, which is doing pretty well. A lot of new growth. And its neighbor is Hoya lacunosa mint. This one came from my friend Mona. Thanks, Mona. It's doing really, really well. Next to that is Hoya hippolacea, which seems to have finally settled in and seems a bit happy with where it's living now. Next to that, tucked in there, is a little Hoya rotundiflora. And next to that is Hoya ponderata, Vietnam, which is very leggy and very long and very beautiful leaves. And blooms too, it's just not in bloom at the moment. And finishing up that shelf is Hoya nicholsonii, New Guinea Ghost. This one has done very well, unlike the first one I had. And that concludes the top shelf. And the back row of my middle shelf is Hoya mirabilis. I think it's clone A, but it didn't come with that, so I'm not going to call it that. And down here is one of the new additions. That's Hoya oligantha, settling in and looking well. Next to that is Hoya species Ko Chang Island. And this one's growing well, but it's a little pale, so I think it needs to move to a lower light setting. And its neighbor is Hoya Kaulina IR26, doing rather well. And finally, Hoya caudata gold. And this one's just gorgeous. Just beautiful. Love the markings on this plant. It's kind of tucked back in there, but it has done very well, settled in quite nicely. And the front row of that shelf is my Hoya canucamariana, which loves self-watering, and it's just grown like a weed lately. And next to that is little Hoya rigidifolia, just starting to take off. And another one from my friend Mona. This is Croniana Super Silver, and it has grown very well. My Dischidia tonsuensis. After a long spell of just sitting, it's doing quite nicely. And Dischidia nummularia, which has just taken off like a beast. It's such a pretty plant. Very fond of this one. And next to that is Hoya sunrise, which grows really well. I think the leaves are very pretty. And it's just a nice addition. I don't let it sun stress as much as you could, but that's pretty nice. And so that's what's going on this middle shelf. And in the back row of the bottom shelf is my Hoya finlaysonii, one of my finlaysonii. And down here next to it is my Dischidia nummularia dragon jade, which is doing really well. So I'm happy about that. Next to it is my Hoya hushkeliana, inner variegated, and I've got it under fairly bright light because of all the variegation. but it's just a beautiful plant and is getting ready to bloom back in there. And has been blooming pretty much off and on for the past 6 or 7 months. And tucked back in here is my little Hoya mamasa, which is growing really well. It took it a while to get settled in, but it seems to like where it is, so that's cool. And in the back corner is my Hoya crassipediolata, which is just a wonderful little beast and seems very happy down here. So that's where we're going to let it sit. And in the front row is my Hoya Nicholsoniae. And I think I'm going to have to find another spot for this because it's growing really, really well. I'm not complaining about that, but it does present certain challenges. And next to that is a Hoya carnosa compacta, the green variety. And it's really pokey slow, but it hasn't died, so we're okay. And over here we have Hoya patella, and this is the pink variety. And it has just started taking off as well. I've moved it to a situation with more light, so that's very cool. And finally is Hoya biruensis. And this is the species formerly known as species affinity Spartioides, but it became its own recognized species earlier this year. And it's doing very well and pushing out some new growth. So that's the bottom shelf of this set. And finally, I've found that the floor in front of some of these shelves has great light for Hoyas. It's what I refer to as the fallout area. It's just enough bright light, it's fairly indirect, and some of the Hoyas with darker leaves really appreciate that. So there's quite a few that live on the floor. So let's take a look at them. And there are a whole bunch of plants that live on the floor in front of these grow shelves. And the first one is Hoya fuwaensis, followed by Hoya ruthiae, UT168, and Hoya parviflora splash, and Hoya hot lips, who is living here for right now in somewhat lower light. And this is Hoya subquintuplinervis outer variegated. And here's a little Dischidia vidalii. It's tucked down in here. We have Hoya Denisi Frida, who's just doing great work. Really appreciate her efforts. And Hoya Nicholsoniae, which is getting ready to bloom for the first time. So that's very cool. And it keeps getting more crowded because I'm going to add my Dischidia acutifolia. And we're going to keep adding to that mix with Hoya McGillivray, who lives down here, and Hoya MB1414. And also living down here on the floor is my Hoya maniparensis. It's living right next to Hoya endauensis. And next to that, Dischidia acutifolia. And when you add Hoya carii and Hoya MB 1497, And that poor intervariegated incrusata to the mix. Well then, those are the plants that live on the floor in front of the desk and the shelf. Whoops, and I almost forgot. There's species Lei Chow living down here too, looking very, very gorgeous. So that's the crew that lives down here. Now against the northeast wall, I have an old desk with a lamp because that's one of my front windows, and you always have to have a light on in the front window at night in case somebody shows up. So we're going to take a look at the Hoyas that live on that old desk. And on the desk next to those shelves, in front of a southeast facing window, is a Hoya latifolia outer variegated, who seems to be enjoying in this spot, so I'm not going to be moving him anytime soon. And I tucked my little Medusa back in here, but I'm not sure if that's what it's going to appreciate. We'll give it a try and see. Next to that is Hoya obovata, which is doing very, very well. It just finished blooming. I had to vacuum up before I started filming. And he could probably use a bit of a trim, especially considering those two vines, but they had peduncles, so I wanted to let them go a bit. And back here is Hoya leonensis, which seems to be doing okay. I haven't found the right spot for it yet. I don't think this is it, but it's doing all right. And on the back wall is my Hoya lithophytica, which is just a monster of a little plant, and it needs to be trimmed. And it hasn't bloomed yet, so we'll have to see what happens there. And on the front of that desk, we have Hoya vacinioides, which is looking very nice. And next to it is Hoya species Papua IM08, which is also kind of liking this spot and decided to send off a little vine going on a bit of an adventure. So I'm going to have an intervention with it and get that vine going in a better direction. Next to that is Hoya Puliana IM02. And finally, Hoya engleriana. They're all doing really well in this location. And tucked back in there is a little Hoya Chelsea. I haven't found a home for yet, but maybe someday soon. And that's what lives on the desk. And next to that desk, I have another set of grow shelves. These are the same size as the other ones, but I only have 3 shelves installed. So there's one at the top to hold the light. There's one in the middle, which also holds a light beneath it. And then there's one at the bottom, so I can get a vacuum underneath and clean up in there on those rare occasions when I do that. And I cleaned up for y'all, so, it needed it. Y'all were my excuse for cleaning in there. So yeah, let's take a look at these shelves. And on the shelf to the right of my Hoya lithophytica is Hoya David Kamingi. I love the blooms and the scent on this, and it just finished blooming. And to the right of that is Hoya wenshanensis, formerly known as species Affinity serpens. And next to that is my Hoya spartioides, which has gotten to be a rather large plant, which I hadn't expected, but I'm pleased about. And then I have a couple lacunosa. There's a lacunosa intervariegated, which is sort of reverting, so we need to do a little clipping on that. And then a plain green lacunosa back in here, which is, all things considered, considering the location and everything else, doing pretty well. In this front corner, we have Hoya Ficci, which has finally decided to be happy. And my new Hoya Serpens. And next to that, my new Vanviengiensis, which is putting out a major vine. And that means that it needs a trellis. In the front row of that same shelf, I have my Hoya Daikie, which has just become a favorite. I love the variegation, I love the leaves, I love the size of them, everything about them makes it a favorite. And tucked back down in here is my Hoya crassipediolata Splash. And it seems to like this location. It's put out some new growth. And next is my Oreosparte species formerly known as Papua Hoya 001, which is just a rampant grower. I moved it here because the light was a little bit lower and I think it's happier. So yeah, we're very pleased with that. And next to that one is Hoya naboanensis, which I've had for quite a while, and it has been just a monster grower. A nice little bit of splash, cute, short lancelet leaves, and it's done very, very well. And on the wall right next to that shelf is my Hoya linearis. And it has decided it likes that spot and has disappeared down there toward the floor. And that's this top shelf. And next to the lower shelf, I have my Hoya curtisi, which has done really well here. And on the floor in front of that is Hoya paradisia NS11159. And on the shelf proper is my Hoya fungi, which is just a beast and winds through the back of the shelf, the fencing there, and is blooming again and has gone on some other little adventure. I have to find out where that's gone. Next to it is my Hoya marillii. Good bloomer, pretty plant, nice veining on it. And next to that is a Hoya caudata sumatra, which has also gone on a few little adventures of its own, and I'm going to have to, I fear, cut it out of those shelves. And in the back there is Hoya rosita, who likes this spot. I also moved her to a self-watering pot in an organic mix, and she likes it there. And in front is Hoya amicabilis. Beautiful, beautiful plant. And in the front over here is Hoya occultata. And that's who lives on the bottom shelf. And because these shelves are adjacent to another set of shelves, there's a lot of very nice fallout light on the floor here too. So let's take a look at the plants that live in the vicinity of the front of the shelf. And there's some others that live in that neighborhood. One of them is my Hoya decipule. And next to that is this giant Hoya lobii, which is getting close. Both the decii and the lobii are getting close to 1 meter tall. And in here, we have Hoya lobii, the orange variety. Beautiful, beautiful leaves. And next to that is my Hoya carnosa Wilbur Graves, which is getting ready to bloom yet again. This one just grows like a beast. And backing here, we have Hoya odorata, and Hoya species Lei Chang forest. Love the leaves on this plant. They're very, very pretty. And finally, back here between the shelves is my Hoya meredithii. And that completes the two north walls of the plant room. And the question for the comments this week, playing off of last week's question, what's the plant that you have no regrets about buying? It's just one that you will probably always have in your collection that has just outperformed all your expectations and that brings you a lot of, the current phrases, brings you joy. But you know, the one you're really glad you either spent the money on or glad you found. So what's the one plant you have no regrets about buying? And as always, I want to thank you for choosing to spend a little bit of your time with me this week's end. Please remember to click the thumbs up, like button, the subscribe button, and the notification bell, and YouTube will send you a reminder of when I post a new video. A lot of the products that you've seen used throughout the course of this video and the following one are available through my Amazon storefront, and there's a link in the description to my Amazon storefront. I receive a small commission from the sales, but it doesn't affect your price at all. If you'd like to support the channel, there's also a link in the description to my Buy Me a Coffee page, or there's a thanks button somewhere down here, I think, and YouTube handles all the processing for that. And those contributions are very, very much appreciated. As usual, there's going to be links to a couple more videos that you might enjoy over here on the side, and please enjoy the rest of your week's end.